To put them on a fucking breathing machine that early.
I can give one example, and this is kind of, I can only say one patient that I can say for sure that I advocated for, or I really was like, all right, this guy does not need a tube, right? And I spent time with him. It was my only patient that night. And what's nice about having a 1-to-1, so it's one nurse to one patient ratio, is you can focus on that person, right, and really help them. So I go in there, and they're like, this guy's going to get a tube tonight, right? That was like what the doctor said at the beginning, plus the nurse that I had gotten a report from. So I go in the room, and I go, hey, what's up? Like, what's going on? How you doing? We start talking. We get comfortable. I build a rapport, and I'm like, hey, take this machine, which is just a simple piece of, it's called an incentive spirometer. It's you take deep breaths. It forces you to take something. Yeah, it's like a ball, but you take deep breaths and you can measure your lung volumes with it. But it's an exercise, for your lungs. So what I see is like, okay, not only does it force you to take a deep breath, but it forces you to slow your breathing down, and you start to taking a deep breath. If you have anxiety, it helps, right? So I can tell this guy is anxious because everybody's telling him, you're going to get a breathing tube. Everybody's telling him this, and he's just like breathing 40 times a minute. His saturation's good though. It's like 95%, but he's on 15 liters face mask or non-rebreather. And I talked to him like, hey, like do these exercises a couple times per hour. I was like, slow your breathing down, relax. I get out of the room. His sats looked fine. It's been about 3 hours now that he looked exactly the same. I'm watching this guy, right? Like I'd spent probably almost 2 hours in the room with him. So I get out of the room. I'm hanging around, still watching him. Doctors come by. Hey, like we're going to talk to him. We're probably going to put a breathing tube in. And I was like, really? And a lot of these doctors were like pretty new attendings. So like they weren't like attending doctors for years. These were like fresh from fellowship, brand new doctors, right? Not to take away from them, but they, I can't say, I don't know if their decision making was the best. They're just kind of listening to this guidance, right? Either way, I tell this doctor, I go, honestly, I think we should wait to put the breathing tube in. Like he looks pretty good. He doesn't want the tube. I asked him specifically, and he goes, I don't know. I think we want to put this tube in. And I go, let's try not to. So this other doctor goes in the room and tries to convince him for about 30 minutes to take a breathing tube. He says no. So I'm like, thank God he said no. I said, I'm going to be right here watching him. I will go in there, work with him. If anything changes, even the slightest bit, I will call you and we can put a tube in. But the guy, he goes, I was like, let's just wait. And he gets frustrated and he goes, we're going to intubate him. And he just walks away. And when he said that, I was like, okay, like that dude's a dick, like whatever.
The doctor said that.
Yeah. And he walked away frustrated because I did say something kind of rude, but
What did you say?
Well, basically he goes, we want to prevent harm to this patient. That's why they want to put the tube in.
Even though the harm wasn't there yet.
The harm wasn't there. They're technically, if you're taking large lung volumes and breathing a lot per minute, like your tidal volumes are huge, you can kind of damage your lungs over time. There could be long-term effects.
But you're seeing that there's something there, but it wasn't official yet.
No, he looked okay, right?
Okay.
By the time, so he goes, we want to prevent harm. And I go, what do you consider harm? And he gets very frustrated with that. And then I go, do you consider putting a breathing tube in somebody and proning them, sedating them, and chemically paralyzing them harm? And he just goes, we're going to intubate him, and walks away. He was pissed because I don't know if he thought I was right or he just didn't want to admit that maybe some doctors just don't want to listen to nurses. They don't think they know shit. They just don't. And he was frustrated. Fast forward, later in the night, so this guy looks good, right? He's still looking about the same, but now his breathing is he's now breathing in the 30s. He's sleeping now. So he was breathing 40 times a minute. Now he's in the 30s. Now he's in the upper 20s. I'm like, okay, he's looking pretty comfortable. The other doctor comes back, the one that had convinced him, but she was kind of like somewhat siding with me on this, even though she was trying to convince him to get the tube. She's like, yeah, maybe you were right. And I go, yeah, he looks pretty good, right? And I'm like trying to like support her at the same time because I'm like, I understand like what you're trying to do. You're trying to help these people, but it isn't always helpful to just jump to conclusions, right? Like I personally was like, hey, I'm right here. And I've been a nurse for a while, so I can watch somebody and I can see subtle changes. Let's make this very long story short.
No, this is fascinating.
4 days later, actually, I'm sorry, next day, he gets discharged from the ICU, goes to the floor. 3 days later after that, he goes home. I don't know where he is now, but he was discharged 4 days later. This doctor, the one that tried to convince him of the intubation, not the one that was a dick, the other one she was actually a fellow, comes back up to me days later. She told me the information. She's like, hey, I just want to tell you, like, you saved that guy. Like, he went home. And that, to me, it was kind of scary because I think about, okay, how many people does that apply to across the board that didn't have somebody to say, hey, let's not do this. Let's just wait a little bit. Or, cause you got to consider all these things, right? I had him as one patient. He's my one patient, 1-to-1. You don't get that care often. A lot of times this nurse may have 5 patients. So there's no time to like really sit back and be like, can we make a different decision? Can we wait a little bit? And that stuck with me. It still sticks with me to this day. And we treat these patients a lot different now. But I'm just kind of like, how many people could have done better, with different decision making, better staffing? There's a lot. So,
dude, that is intense. But that's fucking beautiful. Like, first of all, it's like my mother when she was dying, and I still think she died early because it's a whole long story, but she was, almost 90, but she had advocates. I would see this stuff. She would go to the hospital and the hospital was like, we can't do anything for her. She's old. So then they put her in another center. It's some kind of like center where you put older people it's like a hospital, but less intense. And if she didn't have all of her children, my sister said, she has advocates. You were advocating for this guy. Mm-hmm. If she did not have us advocating, my mother would have been chucked and trucked out. I mean, there was I caught him doing so many weird stuff. I'm like, don't put her in there. They were weighing her like a chicken. And it was just too much for a person who's old. So, but thank God each kid watched her,
Well, you got to remember this too. This
is what you did. You were like that guy's angel. Dude, you saved that guy. Now think about that. That's an amazing story. And think about it during this time. We all need that to take a step back and be clear-headed.
Yeah. Well, one sad thing about this whole thing, it's kind of changed. It's changed for a little bit the better now, but people didn't have families in there because we didn't allow it. We didn't allow people to come in. So we really, if your nurse wasn't advocating or your doctor wasn't advocating for you, you had nobody to advocate for you. Like there was nobody.
What happened to the doctor? Did you ever see him again?
I never saw that guy. Well, I saw him. I didn't conversate with him like that, but I think he kind of probably stayed away from me, and I didn't want to talk to him. It was just that interaction I didn't appreciate it.
A lot of doctors are socially inept. They're just brains. Mm-hmm. To find the good bedside manner is rare. Don't you agree with that?
It's rare. It's sometimes rare, but it's more they need time. So newer doctors, I would say, rarely do they have good bedside manner. But you see a lot of guys, if doctors have been in the game for a while, they usually eventually get good if they're making an effort. But that's a lot of personality too. That's you either have it or you don't.
Dude, I gotta tell you, it's just certain hospitals Cedars. It's I just love that hospital. And maybe, I'm lucky and whatever, and I've been very fortunate in my life, but there's not one person in the hospital with bad bedside manner. Mm. And they make you feel so comfortable there. They're incredible. I went in there with multiple things one time, and they were like, this is this, chill out. And they're really good at it. And they answer every question. They're patient. So that's just very rare. County, I've had some good times in county hospitals, but people are overstressed. They're not empathetic because they're looking at the numbers and it's so
Well, you got
intense.
places like Cedars are, they're probably well staffed.
Incredible.
They are. Like I know that hospital, but like they're well staffed, they're well paid. So
Yes.
these nurses are getting paid. They're happy.
Yes.
And then it starts from the top, dude. A lot of these places, like I used to work at Northwestern in Chicago, and it was like when you go to the orientation, they're like, we are Northwestern. Like they're very like
Proud.
believe in us. We are we're number one. Like they're like very proud of it, but they're like, you are too. And then they tell, like, it's kind of like cheesy, but it's like, be proud of being here. And they teach from the top or from the start. Like if somebody asks hey, where's the cafeteria? Maybe walk them there if you can, walk them. And it's like, but you realize, okay, that's not really that hard of a gesture, and these people are taught and they're trained to be that way. So, and there's been changes in the last, like even during my time of being a nurse, probably in the last like 5-6 years, that places are trending towards just like patient satisfaction big time. And you get those, have you gotten something in the mail? It's like, hey, rate your hospital or your
I get
services.
it from Cedars, yeah. But that's like, I'm lucky. It's a really beautiful hospital.
But yeah, I mean, you get these, like hospitals have like, what is it called? Like almost like staff encouragement teams or like, like onboarding teams or like, hiring teams that their goal is like to make you love working there, at least at the start. They want to make orientation fun. They want to make you believe in the hospital. A lot of these small county hospitals, they're like, we don't have money for these people to smile at you, But
yeah, that's got to be, and that's what's so intense for people that, they're not getting the proper health care doing this.
You have no idea.
Well, say it.
There's not a lot to say. I've just seen, I've seen a lot of bad hospitals in my time for sure. I mean, I've worked at about, 10, 11 places now, I want to say.
And what's a bad experience? Tell me one.
There's a lot. One specific, being at a hospital and nurses are just like on their Bluetooth headsets, admitting patients like brand new to the unit. And they're like, oh, hold on, let me take this call. Beep. And then they're like, oh, what's up? How's it going? And then they're talking on the phone and the patient's just like, what the fuck's happening right now? And I've seen that. And then I'll come in. I'm like, hey, do you want some help? And they're like, no, I'm good. And then I'm like, all right, well, I guess you are.
So they're doing a personal call.
Or personal calls and then ignoring ventilator alarms and shit. And this is like a while back. Like, and to me, I will say I've always been trained really well from school.
Who trained? What school?
Purdue University Northwest.
Okay.
So, but so Purdue is like very well known for nursing. They pump out really good nurses, and our clinicals are good. And their teachers, everything. But my first job, we had a whole year program for new grads, and I had 20, 30-year, 40-year nurses teaching me. Now you have like TikTok nurses teaching other TikTok nurses. It's kind of scary.
Now, what's a TikTok nurse?
I just said that term right now, but it's like they're like wearing like, they look hot, they're young, and they're not the best nurses, and they're making like dance videos on the units and stuff.
I saw that. Does that really happen a lot?
I mean, I don't know how. I do see people taking pictures and videos sometimes. I mean, you see it. That's the problem. It's like, and those are the people that are probably like promoting the vaccine. And it's like, you're doing a dance video on the unit. Like you're not that busy.